Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. I've got good news. They basically decided that felons can have firearms. Now, why is that a big deal? Most of us in the 2A don't agree with felons having guns to begin with. But in this case, we have to take this as a W because it's using the context of the Bruin decision to basically give rights back to citizens. And understand that the founding of our country, our founding fathers were felons because they separated from England. These guys were facing treason when they separated and decided to declare independence for our great country. So this is actually a win, even though it may not seem like it for some of you who are the law and order types that don't believe someone who is a nonviolent offender, a white-collar felon basically, should get their rights back. And I'm still of the volition that if you've served your time and done what you needed to do to make restitution for your crimes, you should get your rights back, including the right to vote and everything else. You should be brought back as a full citizen. So that's some of the good news. Bad news. Bad news comes in big waves. I've been trying to preface this stuff and teach you guys how to do or give you the basics of how you could start reloading, just to find out that Alliant Powders this weekend has announced that they're not filling orders anymore. Because of the wars that are going on, there is a shortage of nitrocellulose. So if you don't know what nitrocellulose is, basically you take nitric acid, you pour it over cotton, and the gelatinous material you get, you harden and then cut up, or you dry, and you cut up into pellets or flakes, and that's how you get gunpowder. And because of the wars that are happening in Israel and Ukraine specifically, there's a worldwide shortage of said item, unless you're in Russia. The Russians have somehow skirted sanctions and have spun up a wartime economy, and they're producing more than they ever have. That's because they grow cotton in Uzbekistan and some of the other Soviet Russian satellite countries. The United States, well, we didn't do that, and nitrocellulose was also something that was used for the COVID tests, which was pretty much pointless if you look back, hindsight being 2020 now. So there's been a shortage incoming and building for a while. Now, what does that mean for the reloading community? It means if you like Alliant powder, and the one that I would be really heartbroken over on this one has to do with specifically the Reloader series powder, Reloader 10s, Reloader 10, 16, 14, all those guys, and Bullseye. So Bullseye is a powder I like using for pistols. So that type of powder is not going to be produced because of that shortage. That means that other gunpowder manufacturers are probably spinning up, but that also means that they're probably serving orders for the military, which means we're going to have to pay more for reloading. So I'm going to put a pause, pump the brakes on this for a little bit until I get some more information. I'm going to talk to my buddy at Go Rogue, Lance, the guy that we're going to be interviewing soon, or that I'm going to be interviewing. I don't know why I keep saying we, because I think of this as a team effort with you guys. What else has been going on in the AK or in the world of firearms? So AK Bash went off. I wish I could go. As things are starting to stabilize in my world and I get more financially sound, I plan on going to that one, and I also plan on going to SHOT Show. Go Rogue is getting bigger. They're getting more of a name. If I have my way of doing business or representing them as much as I can, they will continue to gain a foothold. Go Rogue is mostly Northwest New Mexico, some New Mexico. They've shipped some orders a couple other places, a couple other states. But as they get their footing and start producing more and more ammunition, and it's of the quality that he produces or Go Rogue produces, I suspect that they'll be just as big as Phoenix Ammunition, if not bigger. It depends on how much capital Lance can actually drop into the company and keep it rolling. But I plan on being at SHOT Show one way or another. My other friends want to buy civilian passes to go just because we've never been. Being a gun guy, this is one of those cherry things, bucket list type things I got to do. On the cooler side, I have a really, really cool friend who has heard me opine about how I wanted an Adidas tracksuit. All of you guys that are listening to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union know that I am an AK guy to the bone. I run them. That was my first black rifle. I've said that so many times. You guys are probably tired of hearing it. But it only makes sense that I would have the Slavic camouflage, so to speak. That is the Russian mafia suit. So I now have one. I have a black Adidas tracksuit. I'll soon have my black balaclava to go with it. So I've got a picture on my Facebook page. I may put it on New Mexico Black Rifle Operators page just to show off that I do, in fact, have the accoutrement. In the picture I have that I'm showing my friends right now, I have my AK-74, my Bulgy that I made myself. What is interesting is I have a new friend, who's building an AR-15, or who has an AR-15, and he's tuning it and building it up to make it, like we all do. We get a base model and we start adding parts. And he asked to borrow some tools. And I can't find my damn vice block for an AR-15 lower. Now I know I have it, and it's very possible I may have lent it to my buddy Dexton. Point is, I don't make ARs or assemble them as much as I once did. Can I? Absolutely. That being said, rarely do I need a vice block. That's usually something you have to do with when you're doing gas blocks. And I have two, and I can't find either one of them. And I don't know where I packed them away. It's probably because I don't do enough AR-15 assemblies anymore. Mostly because I kind of buy what I need, either close to assembly or pretty much fully assembled. When it comes to uppers, I usually stick to assembled uppers. I have built upper assemblies, but I don't normally do it. And the reason being is I'm kind of a warranty snob, even in my other life, which is as an IT guy. I like having warranties on equipment so that if something breaks, I can have one neck to choke and they can give me what I want. As I'm watching the world devolve into war, I've had a lot of really good friends query me about the Israeli stuff and why I back Israel. That really does have to do with faith. But on the other hand, I actually understand exactly where everybody else is coming from. Why are we spending American tax dollars on foreign wars that don't benefit us, really? I would say that as a truly faith-based question for myself. The other part of that, the ANCAP part of me, really does have a problem with that. And I've had to reconcile that a couple different ways. Like I said, faith-wise, there's only one answer. ANCAP-wise, it makes no sense to do what we're doing. Geopolitically, it doesn't make sense to do what we're doing. And here's why I would say that. Backing Israel or stabilizing the region in any way, shape, or form really does not benefit the U.S. It benefits China, benefits Russia. The U.S. is pretty much energy sufficient. We don't need our self-sufficient, that is. We don't need foreign energy. And the only countries that do are China, Russia, the European Union, and the European Union has become one of our biggest trading allies to get energy. So really, the only ones that really care about the Middle East anymore are the Chinese, because they need the oil. They do not have the resources or can't get them from Russia or can't get them in quantities they need to keep themselves self-sufficient. So it makes sense that a lot of people would be against helping Israel. I personally can't do that, and I explained that to you. It has to do a lot with my faith. Israel is God's chosen land. Therefore, I see the United States having a covenant with Israel that we need to keep them around. That being said, I also know Israel is very independent itself, and while Biden has stopped bombs from going over there, that doesn't mean Israel can't defend themselves and doesn't mean they can't take care of themselves. It just means that it's going to be more difficult for them, And I totally get where everybody's coming from, so don't get me wrong. This is one of those cool things that I love about the 2A and love about my community and the community of people that are, free thinkers, is that we can have these discussions and not actually go to blows. The people that hit me up about Israel, I would consider close friends. And how it ended up going down is we ended up going and having a drink afterwards, just to show that we don't care. These are our own opinions. It doesn't actually matter because we really don't have anything we can do about it. The United States is going to do what the United States does. The government's going to do what the government's going to do, and I've come to that conclusion a long time ago. So I've wanted to stick to talking to good things about guns. Hellpup, if you don't know who those guys are, so Fabryka Roni, which is a Polish manufacturer, has started producing the Hellpup again. For those of you that don't know, the Hellpup is a pistol Kalashnikov. Now, why would you care? Shorter barreled guns, especially in the 5.56 or the 5.45, are usually less accurate and less less of a punch. So why does a shorter gun matter? There's no free lunches in physics. So with certain calibers, if you look at the 5.56 or the 5.45, the 5.45 is a Eastern clone of the 5.56 round. So what I mean by velocity dependent is they rely on velocity, and I mean when I say they, those calibers rely on velocity to translate energy into a target to do the damage that they're going to need to do. They don't have the velocity, or they don't have the bullet mass, to actually inflict the damage like, say, a 7.62x39 or 308. Any of the heavier caliber, heavier bullets would have, because you're talking about something that's 55 grain or 53 grain for a bullet versus something that's 150, 168 grain, 122 grain. You see, there's a huge difference there. So how they translate energy into the target to be effective is different. So the 7.62x39 and the 300 Blackout are kind of twins also ballistically. That means that they burn their powder charge inside of a set amount, usually within 7 or 8 inches of a barrel with the chamber. That means they're getting the maximum velocity they can before they exit 7 or 8 inches. That extra 16 gives it more stability for the bullet, more grooves for it to go along to stabilize the bullet better, and also conforms to American law better. If you take a 7.62x39 and you shoot it out of what is colloquially known as a crank-off, which is an 8-inch or an 8.5-inch pistol, you end up with about 200 feet per second less than you would if it had the full 16 inches. Okay. If you take a 5.56, though, and you do that same thing, or a 5.45, and with those it's usually an 8.5 or a 9-inch barrel, and you shoot it out of that gun, what you'll notice is that instead of having 3,200 feet per second or 3,000 or 2,900 feet a second, you're down to 2,500, which means that 55 grain bullet doesn't have the speed it needs to make the damage necessary on its target. Doesn't mean it's going to be useless, just means it's not going to do what it's designed to do. And that's the big difference here. So what the Hellpup is coming out for is, if you've seen Palmetto State Armory and a lot of the newer manufacturers, American manufacturers, Fabryka Roni, because they have the Polish import stamp and can get them here, they're now producing that crank-off style pistol so that you can SBR them or attach a pistol stabilizing brace onto it and end up with something that's relatively useful in a smaller, shorter package. And that's what the Hellpup is coming out with. Now, the one I saw was a 5.56, so I don't see a lot of use in it. But I also understand that the ammunition crunch that the 7.62x39 is not something you're going to be able to find a lot of for a while. That said, Palmetto State Armory has just released their AAC ammo brand, and they have also spun up their Soviet Arms ammo brand. Now, that's a bright spot for anyone like me who likes the 5.45 and the 7.62x39. That means that caliber is going to be produced in quantity in the United States. That said, with the powder issues that we're seeing, we'll see what those prices are going to be in the country. So good and bad news, and I thought I'd give you some like lighthearted stuff to talk about, my Adidas tracksuit, and to talk about the fun stuff that's going on. What do I plan for tomorrow? For tomorrow. So it'll be released on Wednesday. I'll release another episode on Wednesday, and I'll release one on Thursday for Friday. I didn't do that last week because I was trying to figure out what exactly I was going to talk about today, and it was going to be how to set up your reloading dies, and I may still do that. But it's more so thinking about the powder situation. I may be rethinking how I'm going to deliver content or what I'm going to talk about specifically. Because reloading is cool, but if you can't get the components, what's the point? And, that we're all in that same boat. If you're an old school reloader, they just gave us really, really bad news. Because having one powder giant go down is a big deal when there's only 2 or 3 anyway. So bright spot, ammunition still coming into the United States, still here in the United States, still manufactured here. But as war becomes more and more of a thing, expect that ammunition supply to dry up, especially if you're a civilian. Like, share, subscribe. Most importantly, be great.